Hi, this is Sampath, and you are on my next episode on Secrets Behind Great Sales and Marketing. Today, we have Jeffrey, who actually works as a product manager in HubSpot, to talk about ABM versus inbound marketing. I think I found a great person here. Well, Jeffrey, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Sampath, for having me. I'm very excited to be talking with you, and I'm looking forward to diving into all your questions and talking with you.
Thank you so much. So, before we delve into our core topic, do you want us to tell us about your journey in HubSpot and what keeps you excited every day?
Absolutely. So I started at HubSpot a bit over 3 years ago,
Okay.
and at the time we hadn't even gone public yet. I actually started about 4 days before the company went public,
Oh, okay.
and so it was really interesting time. At the company, I mean, clearly we were about to go public, but we were experiencing this very fast growth, and for that matter, I would say we still are. And my journey within HubSpot, I started really as a product marketing manager. And I was working on a specific kind of set of tools. And since that time, I've really been trying to kind of take on more of the overall product marketing. So I'm still a product marketing manager at HubSpot, but what I'm doing nowadays is really I'm responsible for the overall marketing hub, as we call it. So when you think about kind of launches that are come out specifically to do with our marketing product or new products that we're developing, I'm heavily involved with the product team for
That's
those and kind of how we bring those to market. So excuse me. I would say to answer your question about kind of what drives me every day. It's really that I really enjoy the team I'm working with. I think we have a world class product team here. I think we have a world class marketing team here. And really all of our other teams are world class as well. But since I work really closely with the product team, I can just comment specifically on that. But that being said, really what drives me is that excitement of bringing a new product to market and really finding success from that.
that's all.
Not only from a company perspective, but also seeing our users be successful is really exciting to me.
Right, and I think that's all that matters.
I totally agree. Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah. Okay. So since our topic of discussion today is about, is it ABM or inbound and stuff, just to get started with, what is your personal preference? I know HubSpot professes a lot about inbound, but is it inbound or ABM according to you, and why?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that it's my personal preference would be for sure inbound, but
Okay.
I also think that it's not a choice necessarily between the two, right? I saw a while ago, and I forget who exactly said this, so I apologize, but it was on Twitter, and somebody said something to the nature of, "I liked ABM better when it was just called marketing."
Right.
And that kind of stuck with me, right? Because really, at the root of marketing is this concept of very kind of targeted, personalized, relevant kind of messaging. And
Right.
regardless of whether you're talking about ABM or inbound or anything else for that matter, I think those concepts really shine through in either of those cases.
Mm-hmm.
So I like I would say inbound for me personally
Mm-hmm.
because well, for a lot of different reasons, um, but I think you really need both. I think like effective marketers today are really using both, frankly, in some ways. Now, of course, that may differ based off size of the company or the target market they're going after. But I think really effective marketers are employing at least concepts from both inbound and account-based marketing.
Got it. Got it. So, do you think account based marketing is going to be the real game changer moving forward?
Uh, it's a great question. Yeah, I think. I think account-based marketing had a lot of hype around it in 2017, and I think a lot of that was warranted. I mean, it's not a new methodology. I remember hearing about it years and years back, but the reemergence, or maybe I should say a resurgence, of ABM in 2017 was really incredible to see, and more credit to all of the companies and the vendors, excuse me, in the ABM space for that. So, do I think it's going to be a game changer? I don't know necessarily. I think that marketers will continue to employ the tactics and the strategies that work for them.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned before, I think that will be a little bit of mixing matching between inbound and ABM.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think amongst like enterprise companies or companies that lean towards having longer sales cycles or large contract values, ABM certainly is a kind of tool to help them modernize their marketing and sales process, which is great. I think for a company like HubSpot to some extent, and even a lot of our users who are in small to medium sized businesses, they get the benefit of inbound and kind of that branding push and that content push. And they also, can frankly find some benefits from ABM as well, depending on the size of the company or the customer that they are going after.
Got it. Makes sense. So can you speak about inbound marketing and account-based marketing being antithetical?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So this might not be the answer the audience is looking for, but I don't think they're antithetical, actually. And certainly there are some differences or some diverging points, and we can certainly talk about that. But I actually don't think they're very antithetical. Most sales and marketing teams today employ really a variety of strategies. And there are really good ways, frankly, that ABM and inbound can also work together. So inbound has been cast as this like wide net approach. And I would argue, while that's maybe somewhat accurate, that it also doesn't account for the fact that there is very specific targeting and personalization in inbound. And without inbound, if you were to solely practice ABM, some of your branding and kind of reputation and online presence online probably wouldn't have as much of an effect if you were to also practice inbound. So I do think there are some kind of scenarios or some cases where they're kind of antithetical, but in a lot of cases, what I've seen is them actually kind of working together to a large extent. So I think I think it depends how the company and how the marketer or salesperson, for that matter, practices ABM. ABM certainly has this component which could be branded as kind of outbound marketing, right? Where you could be sending maybe direct mail or cold outreaching to different users at that company. I think that is kind of firmly antithetical against inbound marketing. Like we solely believe in
subscription.
Subscription, but also I would say helping people buy the way they want to, frankly, and also buy based off their own kind of learning or discovery process. So if you're looking to purchase an item, whether that's software or whether that's a car or whether that's something else, you're going to follow a process that you probably know and love. And for me personally, if I was looking for like a car, let's just say, I would probably go to Google and start searching around, and I would kind of read some reviews and listen to maybe some podcasts and hear about other users that have that vehicle and so forth and so on. And that would educate me as to which maybe vehicle that I truly want. So I think like that component, of course, fits in with inbound very, very well. There are certainly some folks out there in the market as well that talk about ABM and inbound being kind of polar opposites, right? It's like that kind of flip my funnel concept. I think I think that's the other piece of where somebody could frankly say that inbound and ABM are antithetical.
Yeah.
So when I think they're saying that, like, inbound starts with this broad audience, like you're creating content and you're employing strategies to attract this broad audience in from like search and social and all of these various kind of channels you're looking to attract customers from.
Right.
Whereas ABM, of course, starts with a very, very specific target customer list that marketers and sales and potentially others have worked through. So they do definitely start at different points, and I can see how the funnels are different.
Yeah.
And I guess if you purely look at it from a funnel perspective, they
Yeah.
are antithetical. What I would say though is I think there's actually benefit to running like both in parallel, and there's benefit to attracting a large portion of your audience. And if you have specific target accounts, then you can use ABM to go after those specific accounts in kind of an inbound or at least a kind of a human way, rather than just cold outreach.
Right, right. Okay. So I'm just in continuation to whatever you've just said. Because my next question kind of falls in somewhere over there. What do you think is the diverge point for inbound marketing and account-based marketing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think I talked about one or two of those points, but I think just to dive in maybe a little bit more than that is
Yeah.
ABM is typically like has a few tiers, right? Of like, excuse me, if you're approaching a large company, you have a specific tier that you're targeting marketing at that company, and you are probably creating one or maybe a few pieces of content that's specific for that company.
Yeah.
And your ABM strategy is really dedicated towards selling that one company.
Yeah.
And then assuming that you win that business, then you kind of move on to the next one.
Right.
And that's useful. And it's certainly experienced some success.
Yeah.
But what I would say though is with inbound and more of this divergence point is like we're creating content that is broadly applicable, not only for folks that maybe you're targeting, but also for other potential customers that are finding your business online through whether it's search or through social, or just through word of mouth when they hear about you and they come to your website. Regardless of how they're finding you or how they're hearing about your business,
Yeah.
we're creating content that's more broadly applicable to them and to the end customer that you're going after,
Yeah.
rather than just that one specific company. So I think that's certainly a divergence point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, kind of going back to something I said earlier, I think both are kind of needed, and there are warrants to both and benefits to both, I should say. So I think that's probably one of the main points. But happy to dive into others if you want.
You can actually, because I have a point of view over here too. Maybe I thought I can just put in so that you can add on to it. Somewhere I think if your sales cycle is quite longer and you have to kind of meet quite a few decision makers within the company, I think ABM is most suited in such a scenario. And inbound, I think, is more B2C. It also is applied to B2B, but I think it's more effective with B2C. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think inbound is actually very, very effective in B2B as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of HubSpot's customers are B2B,
B2B,
and
okay.
certainly
Yeah.
and certainly we have B2C customers as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree. I think there's certainly like a broad range of B2B, right? Like
Yeah.
there are, on the smaller side, there are companies that work B2B that have a very short sales cycle that maybe have a small kind of purchase amount or small contract value
Yeah.
or small retainer even. or even if you extend that up into kind of medium size retainers or contract values, I think inbound works incredibly well there, and it's been proven to do so. Like there are thousands of case studies at this point, kind of about that. At the large contract value, I also think inbound, frankly, works well because if you're looking to personally make a large purchase, large software purchase, you're likely going to go and probably search around, right? And ultimately, when you start searching around, you want, regardless of whether you're running an ABM kind of driven process or not, you want that person that you're talking to at that company, or you want that marketer maybe that you're talking to ultimately find you and not maybe one of your competitors.
Right.
So I think without inbound, ABM can also frankly fall flat in many cases. I do agree that an ABM strategy for companies with a longer sales cycle and very large contract values is the strategy to take, frankly, because it targets a very specific company, and you're essentially making them the sole focus as well. So I really think it depends on the company and the stage they're at and the type of customer that they're going after.
Got it. And coming to my final two favorite questions. So since we've been talking about inbound and ABM, can you just tell me, I mean, I think this would be really valuable to audience who want to kind of get started with either of the two. So what do you think is an effective step-by-step way for getting started with account-based marketing? And my next question would be after that, would be what are the effective step-by-step ways for setting up inbound marketing? So maybe those two would be good, valuable insights. And I think both of them, since you're coming from HubSpot and they talk a lot about this, it would be quite interesting to hear it out.
Yeah, totally. I think both are great questions. So thank you for asking. I think both, regardless of whether you're starting with ABM or inbound, I think both have to start with an understanding of who your target customer is. Now, at HubSpot, we call this, and across the industry, I think we call this your persona, right? Like you need a persona of your target customer. And if you have a good understanding of that persona, then you can make a lot of kind of informed decisions based off of who that customer is. So regardless of whether you're using ABM or inbound, I would kind of start there.
Right.
The next step, I would say, from an inbound perspective is start doing research on like how those people, or rather, what type of content that they're consuming and what type of content that they're reading.
Right.
Again, I actually think that will probably apply to both an ABM perspective and an inbound perspective. If your target customer does not read ebooks at all and only reads short blog posts, maybe they don't have the time, maybe they have a lot of meetings in their day to day and they don't have the time to read a long post, or maybe it's the opposite of that. Maybe they have so many meetings and they don't have time to read a blog post as they go in between meetings, and they need to read something that they can download to their device, whether that's a phone or a tablet or a laptop or something else. That's certainly possible as well. So I think when you have some of that information, you can start to tailor and target some of the content you need to create. Based off those two items, you kind of have, at that point, a little bit of a roadmap to some extent. You can kind of clearly see the next step, which is in inbound, it's really start creating content, right? Ultimately, you want to start attracting kind of people into your business and to your website, and helping them answer the questions that they have. That is a cornerstone of really what inbound is about. Is if you have a question and you maybe search Google for that question, that a business and maybe your business has the answer to that question, and somebody lands on your website and ultimately they begin to trust you, and then based off that trust and that kind of mutual relationship at that point, they ultimately become a customer. So I think you can kind of see the roadmap to that point by starting to create content, starting to really understand who your target customer is based off the persona and the content research that you're doing initially. So for inbound, I would start there. And of course, I maybe skipped over some of the setup steps because I think they're maybe taken for granted to some extent. But like, you should of course have a website and probably a blog set up and social accounts on Facebook and Twitter and like so forth. So all of the setup stuff that typically comes before all of that should certainly be the case, regardless of whether it's ABM or inbound. But when you're specifically running inbound, I would kind of start with the approach that I mentioned, which is really starting with your persona, then starting write content, attracting people into your business, and then really start optimizing against those folks that are coming in. Like, where are they falling off? Where are they not falling off? How many are you closing as customers? And depending on some of the answers to those questions, that may mean you need to lean into SEO more. Maybe you need to attract more top of the funnel folks into your site. So maybe you need to create more content and lean more into SEO. If folks are not converting into leads, then maybe you need to lean into nurturing more and kind of some marketing automation. Versus if they're not closing as customers, maybe you need some bottom of the funnel content, or you needed like an outreach program specifically, once you know those folks. So I think there's a lot of possibilities there, but I would really start at the top of the funnel with inbound, around the persona and around content creation. On the ABM side, it really starts the same way, right? You're identifying your target, you're identifying your persona. The one thing about ABM, though, I would say is, even though it's helpful to identify your persona, you're really identifying a target company. You're not necessarily identifying a target individual. You're identifying a target company. And when we were talking a little bit earlier about what's my preference between inbound and ABM, I said inbound, and what I probably should have said earlier is it's inbound because I truly believe that inbound is the human way of doing business. I don't want to be sold to. Like, I don't want to get a call from a sales rep and for them to push a solution down on me just because they think I'm a good fit for their company. If I'm interested in whatever that product or solution is, then that could be potentially a different conversation. But I'm a person, you're a person, we're all people out here, and ultimately we all have slightly different wants and needs and backgrounds. And I think inbound really gets at the heart of that, whereas ABM kind of glosses over some of that and really focuses more on the company versus the individual. So to get back to how to set up ABM, the first step is really understand your target company. I would also go a step further because I do think it's super important to understand the individual that you're really selling to in that company, and make sure that you do define a persona as well. Once you define your target companies, you should be able to create a list of targets that you want to go after, like specific target companies that you want to go after. And typically this will involve sales plus marketing. And so if you're a marketer, then I would advise you sit with your maybe sales director or sales manager or somebody from your sales team to start creating that list, and start to flush out questions like, who are the decision makers at that company? Who are the influencers at that company? And based off the answers to some of those questions, you'll be able to start defining who you need to talk to from an ABM perspective. One of the core tenets of ABM, right, is that you need to address and kind of target everyone within the company that has kind of a hand in the buying decision. So those questions can ultimately help you surface who some of those decision makers probably will be, and so you can kind of approach some of them from a company level. The next piece, so at this point now we have a list we've identified our target companies that we want to go after. We have a list of those companies, and we have maybe somewhat of a list of the decision makers at those companies. Now we need to actually start creating content. And this is again where it ties back very similarly to inbound,
Yeah.
where you're creating content, but you're in this case for ABM, you're creating it for that specific account.
Yeah.
So the content that you're creating speaks to the specific pain points of that company overall. But and even though that pain point may resonate in the market, it's probably very specific to that company. So from inbound perspective, you're creating content specifically to people that resonates more broadly, and in ABM, I would say this content resonates within that specific company.
Got it. Got it.
And then once you have that content, the next step is decide on the channels that you're delivering that content and the messaging through. We talked a little bit about kind of this outbound approach before, but some ABM campaigns can certainly involve things like direct mail or cold calling, or cold emailing even, as the best channels for ABM. So, and maybe not, maybe you have a lot of those folks in your database. Maybe you've interacted with a lot of those folks, in which case that's much better in my opinion. But that's the next step. And the final step is really start to coordinate your messaging across channels. So the idea is to really tailor that message and personalize it to the organization and to those individuals that you've identified as the decision makers. And I think this, again, fits very, very nicely with inbound, right? Inbound, yeah, as a concept is all about personalizing and sending relevant messaging that is truly helpful and human at the end of the day. So once you've kind of employed that strategy, there's numerous ways of measuring it, but that's kind of a few ways that I think about laying out an ABM strategy versus kind of an inbound strategy.
Got it. Got it. Oh, I think that was just fantastic. Really amazing, Jeffrey. Because I think you've just thrown in the light between the two in a very, very subtle way. And I think in a very intelligent way, which would be really, really clear for our audience. And just to wind it off, how much do you think sales and marketing should really align for a successful ABM or a successful inbound strategy?
I think regardless of what strategy you're using, sales and marketing has to be aligned.
And in majority of the companies, they never aligned.
Yeah. I've certainly heard that. Within HubSpot, we have this meeting that we call smarketing. So it's the S from sales, but then it's marketing for the most part. And we take that to mean kind of sales plus marketing, and it speaks to the alignment. And it's a meeting where actually the entire marketing team within HubSpot and the entire sales team within HubSpot come together, and we talk through like campaigns that we're going to be running, and we talk through how we're going to hand off potentially leads from those campaigns over to sales, and what our expectations are from a marketing perspective on how sales should handle those. We also have an SLA to sales on here's what we're going to deliver to you each month. And then also sales has the SLA to us saying, here, cool, like that sounds great. Here's what we'll work through each month based off what you deliver. So yeah, I think here in HubSpot, we're certainly lucky. But those concepts aren't unique to us. If you're in a business that maybe doesn't have great sales and marketing alignment, start by talking about the leads that you're generating, and start by talking about how many of those are being worked by sales, and maybe even try to come up with some sort of SLA. SLA, by the way, stands for service level agreement. So that can be a great path to really getting this mutually understandable agreement and really working together very, very closely.
Got it. Jeffrey, I think you've put in really some valuable insights into our show today, and it was such a pleasure having you today.
Thank you, Sampath. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. I hope this was helpful for everybody.
Yeah.